The Property Bulletin by London Property, the home of superprime.
Leasehold reform is an issue that affects millions of homeowners across England and Wales. At the Labour Party conference, all eyes are on Steve Reed, the new Secretary of State at the absurdly named Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. Mark Chick, Director of ALEP, that's the Association of Leasehold Enfranchisement Practitioners, has written an open letter to him, setting out the urgent issues that need tackling. First, the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024. Although it was passed by the previous government, large parts of it remain unimplemented. Homeowners were promised greater rights and protections, but progress has stalled. The big questions are, when will we see the results of the ground rent consultation? Will the government act on them? And when will the secondary legislation finally bring the Act into force? The delay is already having consequences. In an ALEP survey, more than 80% of members reported stalled lease extensions, falling transaction volumes and rising costs, exactly the kind of problems reform was supposed to solve. Next, valuation. Without clarity on deferment and capitalisation rates, leaseholders face the risk of paying more, not less, for lease extensions. Again, the missing secondary legislation is leaving everyone in limbo. Then there's common hold reform. The government has promised to end the sale of new leasehold flats and create a stronger framework for common hold ownership. But the sector is still waiting to hear when the new leasehold and common hold reform bill will reach Parliament. Certainty on timing would help developers, lenders and homeowners plan with confidence. The message from ALEP is clear. Delays and uncertainty don't just affect leaseholders, they slow down the wider housing market and hold back growth. The sector is ready to work with government to make sure reform delivers what it promised, without unintended disruption. As Mark Chick concludes in his letter, collaboration is key. Practitioners on the ground want to help shape practical, consumer-focused reform that works for everyone. London's so-called housing crisis could trigger an imminent City Hall intervention after Deputy Mayor for Planning Jules Pipe signalled immediate measures to restart stalled schemes. At the Shaping London's Future conference, organised by Landmark Chambers, Pipe acknowledged the capital's development slowdown and said City Hall was working with government to unlock sites. We recognise the viability challenge and the Mayor is serious about kick-starting development in London, he said. Despite great promises of more house building and an influx of migrants, construction in London is at record lows. Pressure is mounting on Sadiq Khan to ease his flagship 35% affordable housing requirement for private developments. Developers argue soaring costs, high interest rates, tougher safety rules and heavy infrastructure demands are making projects unviable. Pipe admitted Khan's so-called fast-track system, planning approval in return for meeting the 35% quota, is no longer delivering, despite tweaks introduced last year. He suggested new guidance was close, with speculation it could reduce affordable housing requirements to around 20%. Examples such as Mortlake's 1,000-home Stag Brewery scheme and Canary Wharf's Cuba Street Tower show developers already winning concessions on affordable levels to keep projects alive. Thousands of approved homes across London remain unbuilt. Affordable housing tied to private schemes through Section 106 agreements accounts for more than half of London's supply, making the slowdown particularly damaging as homelessness rises. Once again, government interference aimed at building more homes ends up building less. Nevertheless, Pipe claims giving City Hall more money for transport investment, including extensions to the Bakerloo and DLR lines and a new West London orbital, will somehow help to hit City Hall's 10-year target of 880,000 homes. But the most immediate change could be a more pragmatic approach to quotas. Schemes should provide what they can, said James Brearley of Newmarket Consultancy, predicting a cut to 20%. Others urged seizing the government's relaxation of Greenbelt rules as a once-in-a-generation chance to expand housing delivery. An official announcement is expected soon, with Pipe admitting there is an increasing sense of urgency. London's rental crisis isn't just hitting today's under-35s, it's shaping a bleak future for their old age. Already 444,000 people above pension age rent privately in England, a 50% rise in 10 years. Experts warn this will double by 2039. State pensions and housing benefits don't cover London rents. Workplace pensions are shrinking too, leaving many with no safety net. 40% of older private renters cut back on food, heating or clothes to cover bills. An estimated 37% live in poverty, almost triple the national average. Millennials and Gen Z face retiring with no property wealth after decades of paying high rents and deposits. Without change, Generation Rent becomes Generation Poor Pensioner. The sell-off of social housing since the 1980s and failure to replace it means far fewer affordable homes. Waiting lists stretch for decades. More social housing, especially adapted homes for older people, and stronger delivery of affordable housing requirements from private developers could help. Without a shift, Londoners renting in their 30s and 40s today could face old age trapped in poverty. The UK's build-to-rent (BTR) and purpose-built student accommodation (PBSA) sectors continue to attract strong investor interest, underpinned by supply-demand imbalances and resilient rental growth. But with development timelines stretched by new safety regulations, standing assets are increasingly preferred. Demand for residential remains high, with investors eyeing first-generation BTR and PBSA schemes where capex-led repositioning can unlock value. The building safety regulator's new gateways process has slowed delivery, making stabilised assets more attractive on a risk-adjusted basis. Location still matters. Proximity to transport, universities, jobs and amenities underpins rental premiums. But operational quality is now equally important. Well-designed communal spaces and engagement programmes boost retention and rent levels. At Cardiff's Gramercy Tower, converting retail into amenity space has been a key differentiator. Operational levers, residential satisfaction, direct responsibility for living environments means customer care is critical to retention. Efficiency, cost control and resource management protect margins, but not at the expense of tenant experience. Sectors to watch. PBSA. Despite maturity, the sector is still buoyant, with strong rental growth and demand from international students. Consolidation deals such as Unite's acquisition of Empiric show confidence. Single-family rental. Rising appeal due to low operating costs, absence of new safety regulations, and opportunities created by smaller landlords exiting under the Renters' Rights Bill. Catella, APAM, part of the Catella AB Group, manages £4 billion of UK and Irish real estate and expects BTR, PBSA and single-family rental to remain central to investor strategies over the next cycle.
Subscribe to our newsletter to receive our weekly bulletins and stay ahead of what's shaping the super prime property market.